Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Another video here, another first impressions review of a new game here. Continuing to pump out more content, be more consistent with my uploads as of now on the main channel here. And today, as you can see, we got first impressions of Timberborn, a game in early access currently. It's a city management game where you play as beavers and kind of build up a wooden settlement around a river, a massive river going through the map, and you kind of orient your society and settlement in order to be obviously self-sufficient and growing, but also be able to withstand and survive massive floods that hit periodically during your playthrough and on a cycle. So yeah, it's a pretty unique game here. Timberborn first impressions. Again, fair warning, this is my first impressions video, and this is a game that is in early access, so fair warning there. But my first impressions of Timberborn as I load into my settlement called Beaver City here are mostly positive. This game, as again, the core function of it is as your beavers here, you basically build up a settlement around a river here, kind of make it self-sufficient and being able to sustain periods of drought that periodically inflict your world, I guess, and your settlement obviously as a part of that. So basically, this is kind of a base map here. There's a lot of different type of map types which I enjoy, and not every one river looks the same or one setup looks the same, which is cool. So yeah, overall, Timberborn first impressions mostly positive. This is a very unique concept which I enjoy quite a lot. As you see, my city kind of here is in somewhat of the early stages, at least this settlement's run through. And it's a very unique game in the fact that, first of all, the concept is really fun and it's a really cool concept. No one else has really done a beaver city settlement building management game before. It's a very unique concept. I enjoy it quite a bit. It's very funny and it's very cool to play. And there's a lot of lore there too if you really want to get into the nitty gritty of stuff of how the humans kind of fell off, and we kind of got a ruined society and they built a. There's a bunch of lore to look into there, which is cool. That I think they put that in there as well. As far as uniqueness outside of the whole plot and idea of what this is, it's not incredibly unique outside of where the obvious beaver aspect comes into play when you consider city management games. It's got your pretty basic outline of a city management game. It's got, you have resources here that you need to maintain and collect and have on a cycle here, like your lumber, your food, your water supply, your power supply. All this stuff is how you have to manage. It's a very, kind of tried and true formula as far as that all stuff goes. It's got housing, obviously, that you've got to manage, storage that you've got to manage for this stuff. Entertainment and keeping your populace happy over here, which is this little camp building over here is one of the things that can do that as well as quality of life stuff like the beaver grinder stuff right here. There's technology and stuff you need to research through some of the innovator buildings here that also kind of drive your technology and your research points up, and you progress into a more and more advanced society as you go. You get upgrades, you become more efficient, you grow across where your area is. You eventually start irrigating into these are city ruins actually, but you eventually start being able to get out further and further into this desolate landmass as you start irrigating, making canals into the land with dynamite and different stuff. Expanding new city to new outposts and cities here. Obviously at the start along the river where it's more convenient to do so, but eventually moving inland as your settlement grows here. So it's a pretty fairly I don't want to say basic, because obviously with the beaver aspect there's a lot of unique stuff that they can add in with that, which is really cool, and kind of do some customization changes to the housing and the power and water and everything supply as it fits the beaver aspect and narrative, which is really cool. But overall, it follows the same somewhat basic formula of most city management games. which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's not a bad formula, Um, and another part of the formula is the main, like, I don't want to say enemy, but the main hurdle you have to overcome, because like every city management game has, you can't just, have nothing, right? There's always got to be some hurdle you have to overcome, or some challenge or obstacle you have to deal with or face, whether that's a physical enemy or something else. Most city management games have that, or else you kind of run into this unthwarted progression and upscaling that just never ends or never has any obstacles. So it's just kind of a linear path with no, zigzags. That kind of eventually becomes boring. For Timberborn, that obstacle is, there's a cycle here with the days and the years and everything and the seasons, and the weather. Periodically through that cycle, and this can vary by having it more frequent and last longer, or last shorter amounts of time and happen less frequently depending on the difficulty of the game selection that you have it on. But there are these floods, or not these floods, but these droughts, I should say. Obviously, the main aspect of the game is the river. That's a large part of your society. That's kind of where you're built around. Beavers, obviously, kind of build dams and stuff in real life and everything. That's a large part of your society, and kind of the entire game is based around water and this river system you have, because that's where obviously directly you collect water from. You can get power from it. That's how it irrigates your land for the food and the lumber resources. It's how the entire society functions, basically, is around water for the most part. And the big hurdle is these big droughts that will come periodically. And obviously, when you have droughts, especially if they're long-lasting droughts, especially on longer difficulty or harder difficulties, it cuts off one of your ways of making power here with the water mills, and obviously kind of puts a cap on your water supply, because you can't collect any more water when there is no more water. So what you have is kind of what you get. So you have to make it so while you have water, you have to be very cautious about collecting water and storing it away in excess for when those droughts do come. Same thing for power. You can't solely rely on water wheels to produce power. You need stuff like these power wheels that they run on to generate power for themselves. If you want, power is not completely essential, but like food and water, but it is very essential to the progression of your society. You need the water, obviously, to keep the land irrigated, especially the further away and more inland you get away from the river. That stuff starts drying up very quickly once those droughts come. So you have to manage that and have systems of irrigation and everything to manage that, so that your crops and your lumber supply in areas don't run out immediately, or aren't able to grow or anything. That's the main obstacle and hurdle in this game, is kind of working around the river and the droughts, which is definitely a task that you have to manage and kind of work around. That definitely adds some challenge, some much needed challenge to this game. But overall, even when playing on a harder difficulty, it's a big challenge towards the start of the game. But once you get a fairly good city infrastructure set up with lots of storage and big farms and fields, it becomes, and lots of irrigation systems and everything, as well as multiple power supplies and all that, it becomes less of a major obstacle and challenge that you kind of have to base your game around, and more of just a minor inconvenience later in the game. When it's annoying, of course, and it sets you back, of course, as this would, but it's not a major inconvenience, and you really learn to kind of just deal with it fairly early in the game. So it's not a huge obstacle or challenge or anything, which, depending on how you look at it, is a good or a bad thing, because obviously it's going to be more of a challenge on the hardest difficulty than if you play on the easiest difficulty, maybe. But overall, it's not something that is really a major challenge or persists throughout the entire time here. Overall, that's kind of, I don't want to say complaint about the game, but kind of something that dings it a little on the point scale is, and it's not something that's unique to Timberborn. I'd say Timberborn, if anything, does a good deal better than a lot of other city management games that do this not at all or very poorly, is introducing a challenge, right? But the problem with the challenge is, oftentimes in a case like this, it's not really that big of an obstacle, to make me kind of really have to think over a long playthrough and challenge me and entertain me over a long playthrough, right? Um, and it's something that a lot of city management games, as I said, have had, where they don't have a lot of pressing concerns or challenges that really um, influence your game. And why this is a bad thing on a base level, it isn't a bad thing, because why would any civilization want a challenge? But if you play a game in city management, it's fun to build up your civilization to a point, but eventually it gets very repetitive, and you're kind of wishing like, oh, this is too easy. You kind of want something to deal with. It's almost like playing Age of Empires, but there is no enemy to attack, type of thing, you know. And it's like, oh, well, I mean, I guess it's fun, but it'd get old pretty quickly, right? And that's what city management games like this need to do. And what they do is implement a kind of obstacle, a challenge for you to overcome and deal with and manage. Whether that's a physical enemy attacking your base that you have to defend against, or a flood or a drought in this game. I think they've done an above average job at doing that, but overall it is not a massive complaint, or not a massive feature in the game. Overall in Timberborn, the further you progress into it, even on the hardest difficulty, I'd say one thing it struggles from is one aspect in which the game struggles is kind of keeping the same challenge level there. Even if your progression kind of like, the progression in this game is somewhat slow, especially on the hardest difficulty, which kind of keeps you more engaged and have something to do for a while. But even then, you're always slightly progressing, even if it's very slight. The droughts become a fairly non-issue for most of the game, and you just kind of are left with a factor of wanting a little more challenge to your games once you progress into a later stage. Is one thing I think it could maybe improve on going into its full release stage, and obviously after. But it still does a decent job with it. The droughts are an impact that you really have to deal with, and it does a lot better than a lot of other city management games. On top of that, there's a lot of buildings, there's a lot of content in this game, maps, factions, a lot of stuff you can do. So you're not necessarily stuck in the same repetitive loop unless you've played quite a bit of time and gotten your money's worth of this game already. So overall, it lacks a little bit in the challenge aspect as far as like obstacles I have to overcome or challenges from an enemy or a drought in this case. But it shines and succeeds in its uniqueness and its draw and appeal from this unique Beaver kind of perspective here. And it succeeds in the fact of a lot of content, especially for an early access game, where there's a lot of buildings to be done. There's a lot of different things you can do with managing and building up a city in a lot of different ways. There's different maps to play on that you can implement those on. There's different factions to play. There's a lot of content here and a lot of uniqueness that, even with the somewhat lackluster obstacle, you're still having a lot of stuff to do, and you're never really bored until a very long period of many hours into the gameplay, where you might start getting a little repetitive. But that's a game really every city management game kind of falters with and kind of deals with, so it's not something unique to this game. And by that point, you really experienced the game and gotten your money's worth, in my opinion, so it's not really a knock on them. So yeah, those are my first impressions kind of Timberborn. Overall, I think it's a very unique game. I think it's a fun game with a good little quirk to it with the beavers here. I think this is a very fun and unique game. Not the most challenging game as far as not dying or having your civilization falter and just collapse like a lot of other games, or like some other city management games. But it definitely is somewhat challenging, especially on harder difficulties. There's a lot of content here, even for an early access game. I'm very much looking forward to what they do through the rest of early access, as well as what comes at release and on after that. So it's definitely a good time to kind of see the game grow, as I think it will. And there's a lot of stuff to look forward to in that aspect. The team over at I think McCanstry is who makes this. has done a very good job with this game, and so far pumping out progress, content, and making a very unique title. As far as city building games go and city management games go, this is a very unique game, as I've said, and it's definitely highly above average city builder game as far as my experiences with them and from what I've gathered from the community and other people's attitude towards the game. So overall, very unique game, very fun game, a very fun, relaxing, cool concept city builder game here that you can really enjoy. Um, Especially now that it's on sale with the Steam Summer Sale, it's at a it's at a discount if you want to get into it. So yeah, that's my first impressions here. As far as scale rating on the scale, what grade I give it, I would give Timberborn on a scale of 0 to 10 a 8.3 out of 10. So I don't want to do the fraction math on what that goes out to in percentage and grades, but an 8.3 out of 10 is what I would give this game. This is a very unique, fun, content filled and interesting to play and grind city management and city building game here in Timberborn that they have. As far as buy recommendation, this is a recommended buy from me. Now that it's on sale, especially during the Steam Summer Sale, this is a highly recommended buy when it's on sale. This is a very unique game. You're not going to regret purchasing it, especially since it's on sale now. And yeah, I love this game. It's a very unique kind of city management game. And those are my first impressions of Timberborn. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't miss any more episodes. Comment down below what you think of Timberborn, what you think of, if you've played it, what your experiences have been, if you've ended up buying it, or anything you want in the comments. And I'll see you guys in the next video.